This is an unscripted audio, so please bear with me. For all the people that are younger than Gen Z, so Generation Alpha and to the future, a lot of adults, both within my generation, Gen Z, and the millennial generation and the boomer generation, are not going to agree what I'm going to have to say. But I do remember what it was like when I was a kid. And even though it's not going to stop the things that are going to happen to you, Generation Alpha, and to future generations, I do remember that when I would hear or see somebody up on YouTube actually express how they cared about children, not just use children as a pawn, but like actually care about children, it made my day. I watched some really bad YouTubers just because they were the only people who cared about children. There was only 2 YouTubers that I remember that talked to my generation, Gen Z, that actually cared about children. They were really a dime a dozen, and they still are. So this is just a giant audio to say that I'm really sorry for what's going to happen to you, and to let you hear a voice from, although she may not be a adult, I'm 20, still an adult who empathizes with your struggles, because at least when it came to my generation, there was not many. Again, there was only 2. There was one good YouTuber, and then there was one bad YouTuber I watched for those reasons. Here is the struggles that I faced when I was a kid. To put it bluntly, my parents were very bad. They were horrible to me. When I was between the 0 and 14, and yes, I do mean like within the 0 range, my mom told me about a story when she bit me as a baby. Yeah, yikes. I was homeschooled for quite a long time. I was homeschooled until 2017. And the homeschool, to be quite honest, was just an excuse to get away with child abuse. Now, there are good homeschools. Mine was not good. Mine, if you got an answer wrong, or you got frustrated, I would immediately get whipped with a belt. So I would get whipped and hit a whole lot. And because I would get hit for not knowing something or being frustrated, I didn't learn good coping mechanisms. Basically, my parents would hit me for being bad, so I ended up hitting myself when I would do something bad, and yeah, that's not good. I would do it in the same way that my parents did it. So, I would whip myself when my parents were not there to whip me for doing something bad. Like, I would recognize, because things that they would hit me for is like not being able to read something. And the reason why I was put behind my reading is because of my eyesight. It's pretty bad. I have to wear really thick glasses, but yeah. So I was put behind my reading, so I wasn't able to read as fast as my parents would have hoped. And so, yeah, I would get hit for not being able to read because of my disability. And so I remember looking at like names on like toys and stuff, and if I wasn't able to read it, I would actually whip myself with my own belt that I was given. And that was just talking about the physical things, not to mention all the manipulation tactics such as gaslighting and double bind and secret rules. To describe one of them, I think the most simplest to describe is double bind. Double bind is when the parents set up a situation where there is no win scenario. One time, while I was packing to go to New York, my parents looked through my bag and said that I had too many pants. When I selected the pink pants to toss, they got upset at me. Then I was just like, okay, I'll pick a different set of pants. And then they got upset at me because I was selecting a different set of pants because I was told by them to select a different pair of pants. So, in other words, whether I picked not to bring the pink pants or not, I would be punished anyways. And yeah, that's what happened. I was punished regardless of which pants I chose, whether I kept the pants or not kept the pants. This will come back up later once I start attending public school, so just keep all of that in mind when I get to that. I wasn't really allowed outside, so I didn't really have a lot of chances to connect with people outside of the house because it was very hard to go outside in the first place due to the rules. So good news, I was able to connect with people online, and bad news, the people online were just as awful as my parents. They just weren't able to do anything physical, as, again, my parents would. So I would always play on this game called Garry's Mod, and something terribly ironic is that I was banned from One Pony Cinema server for being a child, but it was a My Little Pony freaking server. How did they not expect that there would be kids in there? And also, by the way, there was no 18 plus sign anywhere, so it's not like they had any sort of warning. It was just, wow, you're a kid, you little twit, and then got banned. Anyways, so yeah, that's not where it ended. I got banned from a lot of servers just for having a voice. I remember that, like, my friends would be called a bunch of, like, slurs and really awful things, and then I would try to defend them, but I was also a kid at the time, and so, yeah, things that I remember them doing is, so you can, like, there's this thing called a ragdoll. It's basically a paralyzed human body. There was a mod to have players, aka myself and the other people around me, to turn into ragdolls. Here's the things that they would do before banning me. They would take my ragdoll and hang it by the neck to show how much they wanted to kill me in real life, and then ban me. So, yeah, it was really awful. But it was my only form of interaction, and it's not to say that I didn't find some good people online. It's just that I would also get bombarded with people who baited me because I was younger than them. Because of the things that were happening online and also what my parents were doing to me, again, I was picking up some very bad habits and not taking out my emotions in correct ways. So online, not in real life, I would try to stay far away from anybody in real life as, you know, I could get hit. But online, I don't know how to put this, but I always had this, like, sinking feeling in my chest for, like, very, very, very long periods of time, with the exception of, like, a few moments here and there, but I would have this sinking feeling that would just get bigger and bigger. And it didn't feel like a hunger, but made me act like I was hungry. I kept on trying to do everything to fill this hole inside my chest, but nothing would work. But I just kept on doing it because I was in so much pain. So yeah, that unfortunately didn't really help my cause. Even when I would lash out, they then did become justified. Now, I did say I was homeschooled for the majority of my life. I did eventually go to public school as a sophomore. Although I still wasn't allowed to go outside with the exception of public school, me being in public school gave me more opportunities to, go out. When I was homeschooled, my parents could take me out of school at any time. But with public school, you can't do that. So if my parents wanted to take a month vacation, then they just don't bring me. But I put vacations in quotation marks. Trust me, I did not want to be on these quote-unquote vacations. Real quick to mention that, because it's when the physical abuse would be the most awful in the entire year, October, because that's when we were forced to build out of plywood and really heavy material, especially for a below 13-year-old, a giant haunted maze, but against our will. One of these projects had my hands covered in blood, and then another time when she grabbed my head and started banging it against the brick wall outside. So yeah, that's not really happy times. So I'm happy when I became a teenager that I didn't have to deal with that anymore, with the exception of the summer when some of those projects would leak over there. But at the very least, I wouldn't have to deal with October. Public school helped me not only avoid those moments because they couldn't take me out of school for a month, but also it gave me opportunities to go outside the house because my parents were at home. Sometimes when I got off school, as they were off building the haunted house, I forget what the actual reason for their departure on the Pacific Day I'm talking about, but that's one of the reasons why they may depart, even though I did not join them. Anyways, that's besides the point. The point is, one time I managed to go outside and I just went to the grocery store, but I noticed, especially because cops would actually pull me over even though I wasn't even in a car, I was walking, accusing me of like, you're skipping school, you're doing something bad. And I was just like, I'm just walking. And of course, if you play 20 questions, eventually you're going to figure out the one thing I did do wrong, which was I left the house without my parents' permission. Wow, that's such a big violation. So as I've already mentioned, I was physically abused, but when I got to high school, that died down. So it was very hard to get proof when going to Child Protective Services. Long story short, and I mean really short because there was a lot to this section of my life, but long story short, I did get proof and did send it into Child Protective Services. They said that they would keep it on file, but they wouldn't actually do anything about it. So now I figured out, actually recently, that even if they did do something illegal, like, for example, murder me, they wouldn't do anything. I would forget what the name of this case was, but there was this mother who kept on reporting her husband's abuse towards their child over and over again, and social workers kept on showing up, and the social worker kept on saying, this child is being brutally and physically abused. Nothing was done about it, though, and the child ended up being murdered by the father. The mother then sued her state, and the findings was that the cops had no obligation to save their child. Even in the case when the child gets effing murdered, the father, they knew that the father murdered the child. Not like an unborn child. We're not talking about that. A freaking 7-year-old murdered. I could go on and on about all of the horrible things that happened to me due to my age at the time, because I was a kid. And not only do I know that these things are still happening today, this is not even what I've seen happen to kids online. Because of my gender, I have a high-pitched voice, and yeah, that does mean sometimes I still get confused with, well, kids. And that hurts because, then I do have to get reminded that, hey, to this day, kids are still not being treated well online, and obviously that court case, that doesn't make me feel very nice. But not only are the same issues that made my life horrible as a kid, it's also going to be much worse. At least as of the making of this recording, I am not LGBTQ. I would consider myself a supporter, but I am not myself LGBTQ. However, as of the making of this audio, it appears that the government is trying to make it that you're not even allowed to say who you like, to be the person you want to be or want to become someday. The most basic question of who do you want to be when you grow up, now the answer to that question can now get you in trouble with the government. In fairness, you're not going to get sent to jail, at least not as of the making of this recording, but the government will get involved and inform your parents to do the things that were done to me. Because the government thinks that you shouldn't have any sort of opinions or anything that differentiates you from your parent. And they're even willing to encourage child abuse to get that across. And then claim that this is to stop it when it's clearly the opposite. When I talk about this to millennials and people of my generation, they don't seem to get why it's so dehumanizing when a cop immediately assumes that you are doing something bad just by the mere fact of your presence, or being flung against a wall and being screamed at by your parents might be the same way, or feel life-threatening. I watched a clip on YouTube where all the horrible things that were told to me as a kid were told to another kid, and people were mentioning, oh yeah, this is sexist. And I appreciate that they are mentioning the sexist aspect of it, because, yeah, the first thing they asked was, are you a kid or are you a girl? And he answered, it doesn't matter. And then they're just like, oh, you little kid, you little twit, you... And then, yeah, started to shout profanities at, well, what they believed to be a kid. Now, again, I'm happy that a lot of the comment section was pointing out the sexism, but honestly, I was looking at the fact that they were saying all this to a child, so at least in their mind. This wasn't just one person, it was like at least two people or more. When you have like multiple people telling you that you're awful for the mere fact of your presence is dehumanizing. When I describe these things to other adults, they tell me to stay out of it, even if a child's actually being harmed right in front of me. Or oh yeah, we should be treating kids like this, like they're monsters before they barely even entered the world. I know that soon I'm going to become old enough to where all the ageist things that not only do we plant in our society, but just straight up the things we do and say is going to get to me, and I'm just going to become another one of the adults that are going to do the awful things that I described. I fear that day. But clearly something did happen to all the adults, because I know that everybody else in my generation, millennials, boomers, were once kids themselves. Something does happen. Honestly, it's become hard to actually care about children once you become an adult, because of all the things that people say is, yeah, this is just normal, this is how the way things are. That it's normal and okay to strip you of everything that makes you, to treat you less than a human. This has gone to the point that it's even starting to appear in children's shows. I don't know if you'll remember this show by the time that you see this audio or hear it, but there used to be a show called Star versus the Forces of Evil. Star said to her child audience, because this is a children's show, all kids are dumb, and so thereby I should let the homicidal maniacs kill each other, because that's what teenagers do. They let people kill each other because they're just that dumb. And I stare at that and I'm just like, oh gosh, the ageism is now getting into children's shows. Now are you even gonna avoid it when you're just trying to have a good time? Before I forget all the things that happened to me as a kid, before I forget, I recognized how very mistreated you are. That if somebody were to murder you, that no one would care because, well, you're a kid. And apparently, according to the government, you don't deserve the same rights as an adult. That you're not allowed to say the things that you... To put it bluntly, Generation Alpha, I fear that you're going to lose. You've already lost quite a bit of freedom of speech rights. And I truly mean that. I don't believe what is being done to you is even constitutional. If you were an adult and you wanted to say, hey, I identify as a woman, guy, or I like somebody of the same sex, you could say that because the Constitution's supposed to protect you. But apparently it's different for kids. You're not even getting the most basic of constitutional rights. This is the effing first. This is the first one. This is the First Amendment. I know that this won't do anything to stop what has gone on in this society, but I know that when I was a kid, I watched two YouTubers just because they released one or two videos that just said, I cared about you. For as long as it lasts, I don't know how long it's going to last, but for as long as it lasts, I care, and I'm truly sorry. I hope that if a child does come across this video, Generation Alpha, I hope it makes your day a bit better. And I do want to say something that won't stop the things that are happening to you, but for the adults that do care, this is something I do ask that you do. I believe at least YouTube's terms of service allows people over the age of 13 to be on YouTube with consent from their parents. So, with that being said, if I'm right, then can you also make videos describing your struggles? Or whatever platform you want to use. Just get your voice out there. And I'm telling you, for this particular issue, you're not preaching to the choir. There is a very, very small group that knows about what has been going on, and you're the best person to tell it to adults. So the adults that do want to hear it, like me, I do want to hear what's been going on with you. Even if I can't do anything, I at least want to understand, because I don't want to be an adult that makes your life miserable. The group that actually cares is probably not going to get any bigger, but for the people who do want to learn how to be better to you, please make videos describing your struggles, because I only have my memories. Memories that not only will fade, but are stuck within the 2010s. I don't know what's going on now with kids, because I'm not a kid anymore. Neither a teenager, so if you have the time, please do talk about your struggles online so that people who actually care about your voice know what you're going through and can understand you as a person and not what society tells you that you should be.